Medicine has improved almost beyond recognition in the past few centuries, but some things never change. The human capacity for mischief, misadventure, and downright idiocy is apparently a trait that progress cannot eradicate, or, so says Thomas Morris in his book, The Mystery of the Exploding Teeth and Other Curiosities from the History of Medicine. Now, I mentioned this really excellent book, which, let me go grab. Got it, I'm back. This book. I mentioned this really excellent book in my last live stream, and a lot of you seem really excited about it and interested in it, so I figured today I would use it as a little bit of inspiration for this video, which you're watching right now. Hi. The Mystery of the Exploding Teeth recounts some of the most bizarre entries found in medical journals over the last couple of hundred years, and it is fantastic. Mostly, I want this video to be a little bit of a giggle where we can have a cringe together and a little bit of like, oh god, I can't believe that happened together. Although, you know, I do think there is something we can learn from this, whether it be like the science behind some of these medical conditions or what most of these stories boil down to, and that is, don't stick stuff where it shouldn't go. So let's have a look at a few of these stories, and if you want to check out the book for yourself, I will leave an affiliate link to it down in the description below, so you can grab yourself a copy and help support my channel in the process. Before we start, a little bit of shameless self-promotion, and that is, if you are new here or you've just not subscribed yet, please go ahead, do that. I make videos about science and books and poetry and history and all kinds of amazing, awesome stuff. Basically, a little bit of anything, and it's always a lot of fun, and it would be amazing if you want to come along on this journey with me. And also, if you want to find out a little bit more about me and my life, go follow me on Instagram at Rachel Oates with a 0 instead of an O, because I'm annoying. I should warn you before we start that these two stories I'm going to be talking about today are a little bit graphic, a little bit gross. They will probably make you scream and squirm and cringe, so just beware going into this video. It's not for the faint-hearted. Let's read the first story. This one comes from the New England Journal of Medicine and was written in 1949 by Dr. Azariah Shipman, a surgeon from Syracuse in New York, basically. American place names are hard to say. I'm northern. Don't hold it against me. And the story that Thomas Morris here is recounting is from a paper titled Novel Effects of Potassium, Foreign Bodies in the Urethra, Catalepsy. And it opens with the following. A few months ago, I was called in great haste to a young gentleman who was in a most ludicrous yet painful condition. I found, on examination, a bottle holding about a pint with a short neck and small mouth, firmly attached to his body by the penis, which was drawn through the neck and projected into the bottle, being swollen and purple. I think you can see where this is going. He, you know, in true scientist style, went on to describe the bottle. He said it had an opening of 3/4 of an inch in diameter only, and the penis being much swollen rendered its extraction utterly impossible. Not surprisingly, the boy that this had happened to was described as greatly frightened, and at the time he refused to tell the doctor how it happened. He was just like, no, we'll talk about it later, get it off me now. Not surprising at all, let's be honest. So he couldn't simply pull the bottle off because inside it kind of swollen and it was stuck and it was painful. And the doctor did try, but he writes that instead he seized a large knife lying on the table, and with the back of it, I struck a blow on the neck of the bottle, shivering it to atoms and liberating the penis in an instant, much to the delight of the terrified youth. So not the most scientific process, more like grab and whack, but you know, it worked. It got him free. So, you know, simple problem, simple cure. Not that simple a problem. I don't think that happens every day, which is why this is so bizarre and kind of interesting. And this was followed by a hell of a lot of pain as the young man recovered. Understandably. But the really interesting part of this story is how he got into this mess in the first place, right? And it's one of the few cases in this book that actually has a fairly innocent explanation. Mostly men doing stupid stuff with objects that they shouldn't. But this case wasn't. He was actually, it was kind of fairly innocent and he didn't mean for this to happen. So as it turns out, the bottle itself once contained potassium stored in a flammable liquid hydrocarbon, which was to be used in experiments, and because the boy was like working in a lab at the time. And the boy thought that it had all been used up, that it was empty. And he was in the lab working away and he needed to pee. So, being a man and quite lazy, he grabbed, you know, the first empty bottle he could find, which happened to be this one, which happened to have some remnants of potassium and this liquid hydrocarbon inside. And, well, I'll let Dr. Shipman explained what happened by quoting his article. The first jet of urine was followed by an explosive sound and flash of fire. Quick as thought, the penis was drawn into the bottle with a force and tenacity which held it as firmly as if in a vice. The burning of the potassium created a vacuum instantaneously, and the soft yielding tissue of the penis effectually excluding the air. The bottle acted like a huge cupping glass to this novel portion of the system. The small size of the mouth of the bottle compressed the veins, while the arteries continued to pour their blood into the glands, prepuce, etc. From this cause, and the rarefied air in the bottle, the part swelled and puffed to an enormous size. So basically what happened was, he peed in the bottle, it caused an explosion because, you know, potassium is very reactive, and the hydrocarbon it was stored in was flammable, which means the reaction set it on fire when he peed in it. That basically created a vacuum that sucked the penis into the bottle. The blood was still pouring into the penis, so the penis kind of swelled inside, and the small neck of the bottle held it in place, and pain. So much pain for this man. As a woman, I can't even begin to imagine how much this must have hurt. And I know this kind of sounds bizarre and like, well, did that really happen? You know, it seems a little kind of out there. Blah, blah, blah. To test it, the doctor decided to try and recreate this himself, but because he's not an idiot, he tried it with his finger instead of his boy parts, because he's not insane, he's just a scientist. And yeah, it turns out this is exactly what happened, and he did get his finger stuck in the bottle, although I'm not quite sure what he used as like pee from his finger. Maybe he just like dipped it in water or pee or something. Who knows? But the moral of this story is simply, don't be lazy when choosing somewhere to pee, and be careful where you stick your precious bits. Moving on to our second story, if you were feeling a little bit left out by that last one, do not worry. The next case I want to talk about is going to be gross and uncomfortable for everyone, not just the people with penises. For our next story, Thomas Morris found the account of Dr. Salmon Arnold, who wrote in 1925 a report, again for the New England Journal of Medicine and Surgery, about Paruria erratica, a Latin phrase which roughly translates to wandering disorder of urination, which, let's be honest, is a thoroughly intriguing yet disgusting name for a disorder. Basically, this order was observed in a 27-year-old woman who up until this point had been pretty healthy, but in June of 1820, she started to miss her period and spit up blood, so obviously she went to the doctor. Her previous doctors began to use some of the kind of typical but not useful treatments of the time, like bleeding her, and but like bleeding her a lot as well, like every other day, like mountains of blood they were trying to get out of her, and they induced vomiting, like forcing her to vomit and stuff. And after a while of this not working, complications began to occur. And sadly, her uterus prolapsed, which basically means her abdominal muscles were no longer strong enough to hold certain organs, like the uterus, in place. And her uterus literally slipped down her body into the vagina, essentially. And in doing so, it also moved the bladder and basically blocked off her urinary tract, so she could no longer pee for herself. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Like, can you imagine not being able to pee? So she had this catheter fitted, and she had to have the urine drawn out of her once a day by a doctor. Not pleasant. And I mean, this doesn't sound very nice, does it? You know, your uterus falls into your vagina, someone has to literally extract the pee from you every day. Not nice, but, you know, not that uncommon-ish. Except this is where things begin to get really, really, really weird. 2 years after this prolapsed uterus, she visited Dr. Arnold, who wrote this article, because her catheter hadn't been, I guess, drawn off in like 3 days. And, you know, she had a lot of urine built up in her and she couldn't pee it out. No one was taking it out for her. So she visited this doctor, being like, help me. Also, while I'm here, I have this weird discharge coming from my right ear. And I know I just pointed to my left. So he looked at her, he examined her ear. And he noticed there was this liquid, like, literally just dripping out of her ear. You know, he kind of looked at it, was like, I don't really know what this is, but he drained her catheter, and a few hours later, the discharge from her ear stopped. And he thought nothing of it, but when he went to empty her catheter the next day, the same thing was happening. Again, he examined the ear, he examined the discharge, and this time he noticed it had a really, really strong smell of urea, which, as many of you probably know, is the main waste product found in urine. And he was like, is she peeing from her ear? No, impossible. Can't be. Nah, silly. You know, this kind of started slowly, and every day she was dripping a little bit more from her right ear, this urine-smelling liquid. And over time, it got more frequent and more weird, until soon there was literally liquid gushing out of her ear at least once a day, if not more. To quote Dr. Arnold's article, he says, increasing gradually in quantity and being discharged in less time until a pint was discharged in 15 minutes in a stream about the size of a crow quill. Then becoming more irregular, being discharged every few hours and increasing in quantity until 80 ounces were discharged in 24 hours. 80 ounces of liquid containing urea came out of her ear. Her ear! Oh, this is more than the average person pees per day. So he was like, what the hell is going on here? This is bizarre. And then she started to develop more and more horrific symptoms, right? Body spasms, fainting, episodes where she was catatonic for up to 12 hours, periods of being incoherent and kind of rambling and being a bit out of it, loss of sight in her right eye, impaired vision in her left eye, impaired hearing in her right ear, and the pee started to flow from more than just her ear. And this is where it gets really gross. So first it switched from flowing out of her right ear to also flowing out of her left ear, and then her left eye. She was basically almost constantly crying pee. Then started coming out the other eye as well, and she started to vomit, and urea and pee was mixed in the vomit. And if this wasn't bad enough as well, her breasts began to swell, and her nipples started to discharge urine. Yeah, as a woman, no thank you. Then, almost a year after she first started discharging this liquid from her ear, something you would think would only happen in a cartoon actually happened to her. And on this one occasion, she began to get really bad stomach cramps, and her whole abdomen began to swell, and it was growing and growing, until one day there was what Dr. Arnold describes as a loud noise similar to that produced by drawing a cork from a bottle. And with that, urine literally began to spurt out of her belly button with some force. Just gonna let you picture that for a minute. So after this, after some time, it was still coming out of her ears, her eyes, still vomiting it, and the final recorded orifice which urine came from was her nose. So she literally had urine coming out of her nose. All this discharge was definitely examined in kind of lab conditions by a chemist, and it was confirmed to contain a high proportion of urea. So the amount of discharge continued to get worse over the next 6 months, and all the doctors thought she was going to die. They're like, every day they're like, this is it, this is the last day, she's gone. But as Dr. Arnold concludes, it gradually abated, and she is now, when the urine is freely discharged, so much relieved that she is able to walk about her room, and during the summer of 1824 frequently rode out. The discharges from the right ear, right breast and navel continue daily, but they are not so great nor so frequent as they were a year since. From the bladder the quantity is as usual. From the stomach, nose, eye there has for some months been no discharge. So she started to get better, and while we don't know what happened to her after this, it's kind of a miracle, right? Because they don't know what caused her to get better. They don't really know what caused her to get ill in the first place. But this whole story is so bizarre. A woman literally peeing from every orifice on her body, except where she should. Seriously bizarre. But Thomas Morris, author of this book, does try and offer a rational explanation as to why and how this could have happened. So to paraphrase his explanation, which you should definitely go and read for yourself in this book, as Morris points out, all of this began with her prolapsed uterus and the blocking of the urinary tract. So the body could no longer get rid of its waste products like urea through urine, and through peeing out as it normally would. In similar cases like these, it's been observed in the past that the blood can become saturated with urea, which is often called uremia, and Morris notes that it could account for the symptoms like fatigue, abnormal mental state, and tremors. So blood being saturated with urea cause these symptoms. There's another possible symptom that can happen if the person also has kidney failure at the same time, which is called uremic frost. And Morris describes how during this uremic frost, urea passes through the skin and crystallizes. When dissolved in sweat, it produces a liquid that smells and looks like urine, basically on the skin, right? So it could have been thought that she was literally sweating out pee. He thinks it's likely that this was combined with another problem that this woman had called edema, in which there's a buildup of fluid in bodily tissues. Fluid in this case containing urea. So this could definitely have accounted for some of the discharges in her body, right? Morris even gives a possible explanation for the burst belly button, this cartoonish image of a woman with urine spraying out from her belly button. Sorry, it's so gross to even say it. Morris writes that the bladder is connected to the navel by a structure called, I'm going to butcher this, the uretrus, which is the vestigial remnant of a channel that drains urine from the fetal bladder during the early months of pregnancy. So the tube usually disappears before birth, but very occasionally it persists into later life. He thinks that that's what this patient had, and that the pressure building up in the bladder inside her because she was unable to urinate possibly forced urine out through this tube and eventually out through the belly button, and the amount of pressure that was building up caused it to literally spurt out. So this does explain a hell of a lot, but it doesn't quite adequately explain why she had urea in the discharge from her ears, eyes, and nose. That bit is still a mystery, but it's an absolutely fascinating case, and if you have any ideas how this could have happened, why it could have happened, or if you think maybe she was faking or how she faked it, please let me know down in the comments below. This is where I'm going to end this today. Sorry this was like a kind of gross video, but I want to do something a little bit silly and fun. But if you would like to hear more gross and interesting and unusual medical cases from history, please let me know down in the comments, leave a like on this video, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, more sciencey stuff, less gross stuff, more book reviews and poetry reviews and all sorts of stuff like that. And like I said before, if you want to go check out this fantastic book, I thoroughly recommend it. I will leave an affiliate link to it down in the description below so you can check it out for yourself, go support this author, and you'll help support my channel a little bit in the process as well. But for now, thank you for watching today. Hope you're all staying absolutely safe and happy and healthy, and I will see you guys again very, very soon.